Hellish losses for Azov exceed 1,000 people. The Russian army has launched a powerful offensive toward Pokrovsk. Good afternoon, dear friends. As always, we continue to monitor the situation on the front daily, analyzing maps of troop movements and drawing conclusions about how various events might impact the overall situation on the battlefield. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who is subscribed. Today, we have much to discuss. The Ukrainian armed forces are facing enormous challenges in the Pokrovsk direction. The 3rd Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard has fallen into a fire trap, and according to semi-official Ukrainian military sources, half of the brigade, around 1,000 troops, was lost in the fields between Peshanoye and Shevchenko. We will discuss this in detail. Additionally, the Russian army has intensified its offensive, with noticeable progress in the Pokrovsk direction, including a 2-kilometer advance. We will analyze this development in depth. On another note, just a few minutes ago, news broke that the executor of the murder of a lieutenant general in Moscow has been detained. The Federal Security Service has released a video of the initial interrogation. However, it is important to understand that this person is merely the executor. The main question is who ordered the killing. Time will tell whether they can identify and reach the mastermind behind it. Now, let's begin by opening the map. To start briefly, let's review the situation in the Kursk region. Yesterday, we discussed how the Ukrainian armed forces are gradually losing control over territories they previously held. Today, we have additional confirmation of this trend. A village north of Plyakovo, called Cherkasskaya Konopelka, is no longer under Ukrainian control and has come under Russian control, effectively returning home. This is undoubtedly a significant event. Here's why. After Cherkasskaya Konopelka, the next target will be the battle for Makhnovka, a much larger village located just 2.5 kilometers from the current positions of Russian forces. Beyond Makhnovka, it's only 2 kilometers to Sudzha, which is a symbolic and strategic stronghold for the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kursk region. If Sudzha is lost, the continued Ukrainian presence in the region will become untenable. Based on current dynamics and the pace of the Russian advance, the decisive battle for the Kursk region is likely to unfold here very soon. Moving on. At this point, we can confidently say that the counter-offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces in the Pokrovsk direction has completely failed. Despite redeploying significant forces to this area, Ukrainian command hoped to achieve substantial changes on the battlefield, but failed. Instead, they gained only 2 days of respite at the cost of enormous losses. Even Ukrainian military-adjacent sources, like Mosychuk and others, have acknowledged the heavy casualties. As I pointed out yesterday, Mosychuk mentioned that the 3rd Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard fell into a fire trap when entering Shevchenko. They couldn't even reach the outskirts of the settlement before being struck by flanking fire, leaving their dead in the fields between Peshanoye and Shevchenko. As a result, they lost half of their personnel in this area. Reports on the exact numbers vary depending on the source. If the brigade were at full strength, losses would amount to 1,600 irrecoverable personnel, as the 3rd Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard typically consists of 6 motorized infantry battalions, each with 300 to 350 soldiers, plus a tank company, reconnaissance units, support units, a brigade-level fire support group, and other logistical subdivisions. However, the brigade was reportedly under strength, which is common for the Ukrainian armed forces at this stage of the conflict. Nonetheless, they lost approximately 1,000 fighters, effectively the brigade's most combat-capable component. This represents a major failure for General Tarnavsky, who commands Ukrainian forces in this area. What is happening now? Russian forces repelled the Ukrainian attack on Shevchenko, launched their own offensive, and as of yesterday, reached the outskirts of Peshanoye, reclaiming positions they held several days ago. By this morning, the storming of the settlement began. In addition to the assault on Peshanoye, Russian forces have intensified pressure to the east. Overnight, Russian troops reportedly entered the northern part of Dakhnoye, while the southern and eastern parts of the village are already under Russian control, leaving only the western part in Ukrainian hands. A much more significant event occurred south of Pokrovsk. Here, following the defeat of the 3rd Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard, Russian forces made an advance of 1,700 meters. Not only did they reach the outskirts of Novovasilievka, but they also entered the village, where fighting is currently ongoing. If Russian forces manage to fully capture Novovasilievka, their advance will likely continue westward along the Solyonaya River toward the Dnipropetrovsk region. From this position, only 8 kilometers, or 3 settlements, remain: Uspinovka, Novoalexandrovka, and Novosergeyevka. Beyond them lies the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. To summarize, the situation for the Ukrainian armed forces in this area continues to deteriorate. Even a change in command and the deployment of significant reserves have not improved the situation. If we take a broader look at the map, as of January 2024, Russian forces were attacking Avdiivka. Now they are just 8 kilometers from the Dnipropetrovsk region. With 13 days remaining in the year, it's possible that these 8 kilometers could be covered. Overall, Russian forces have advanced 53 kilometers in a straight line over the past year. It's important to understand that this is not open farmland. Like in the Kursk region, this is territory prepared for military engagements since 2015, with fortified zones, trenches, concrete defenses, and layered defenses. Despite this, the Russian army has managed to advance those 53 kilometers. Another noteworthy development is the formation of a large encirclement near Kurakovo. Zelenovka has been captured by Russian forces, as even American maps indicate. Now the advance continues toward Ulakli, which is less than 2.5 kilometers away. Reports have also emerged that Ukrainian units are withdrawing from Dakhnoye toward Constantinople. This is a logical decision to preserve lives, because if Russian forces capture Ulakli, the main supply road will be cut off. This will affect not only the Ukrainian garrison in Dakhnoye, but also in Kurakovo. However, Ukrainian forces still remain in Kurakovo for now. If they delay their withdrawal further, they risk facing the fate of the 79th Brigade in the recent encirclement, either being killed or captured, as there are no other foreseeable outcomes given the current dynamics in this area. Kupiansk direction, as of December 18th. Bridgehead near Dvurechneia. Ukrainian forces lack the manpower to attack. Ukrainian military-adjacent sources lament that the Russian bridgehead near Dvurechneia is expanding because there are simply no combat-capable units in sufficient numbers to organize an effective counterattack in this sector. Many territorial defense units deployed here have abandoned their positions and retreated to Sochintsy. The settlement of Dvurechnoye has essentially been abandoned by Ukrainian forces, and the only thing slowing the Russian advance here is Ukrainian drone operators rather than infantry. The same Ukrainian sources admit that if new combat-capable reserves do not appear soon, the entire area of Dvurechnoye will soon fall under Russian control. From a tactical standpoint, however, it's not necessarily advantageous for Russian forces to take full control of Dvurechnoye immediately. It would be more beneficial to capture the settlement of Zapadnoye and the surrounding hills first. Once those positions are secured, taking all of Dvurechnoye up to the river would make sense, forming a stable bridgehead from which further advances could be launched. That's all I have for today regarding the situation on the front.